Thanks for everybody's patience. I'm going to get started in just one moment. And we are live. So I'm going to share my screen. If I can figure out where Zoom went. There we go. I will share my screen right now so everyone can see it. And desktop 2. Just make sure I minimize the screens. And there we go. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate it. And I think we'll have our new guest on who will be doing these in the future, Jacob Julian, soon. I'm going to hop through real quick, just a high-level overview of Blumira, how the product works, and then we'll go into deep dive as far as the product capabilities. During the session, if anybody has any questions, happy to interact and provide insight into anything that we can answer for you, which will be great. And have a lot of activities going on this week, of course, as we have Amanda Berlin taking over our social media feed. So you should take a look at LinkedIn as well as Twitter if you do have a chance. And I'll hop in and get started. So thanks everybody that's joining. I'm gonna hop through the problem space Blumira demo as far as how we help our customers and solve for their needs. First off, we are focused in the area of the challenges with security operations. So a few things here, which is we predominantly focus the product to address needs where organizations have limited teams and resources. They still a lot of times have a dedicated security function or team. Sometimes they don't. The assumption here is that we're enabling anyone that has basic level IT skills to do detection and response and servicing real risk to them. The other aspect in security operations, which we're focused around, is alert fatigue. There's a lot of noise from the different products within a customer's environment, and what things to actually focus on from a response perspective becomes particularly important there. And then the last thing is, in order to do detection response with the traditional SIM type function, there's a lot of fine tuning and a lot of work that goes into getting to a place of having actionable data and being able to do response. And this is a real challenge. Most organizations never actually operationalized at this point. The reality is the existing tool stack is pretty complex. 75% of SIM deployments fail. And the main thing there is that you have to do ingestion, parsing, threat intelligence, detection rules, alerting, and all of it's a choose your own adventure. And typically you take a SIM, you layer on what's called a source, security operations and automation function for response. And then you usually have a team of somewhere between 5 and 10 different people in order to be able to operationalize these tools. And the area in which we're really focused in is driving down complexity, driving down noise, getting time to security value in a matter of hours, not months or years, and driving down total cost of ownership so it's affordable, predictable, and has a high probability of success. So we'll hop into what that looks like as far as how our product works today. And like I said, don't hesitate if you have any questions or comments, feel free to add them in the panel. What we're doing is essentially enabling IT and/or security teams. And we're doing this by deploying in a matter of hours. We're a cloud delivered platform that integrates with your existing tech stack. And then we're helping eliminate the noise from a lot of the disparate products that we're integrated with so that you can focus on what things matter and be able to take action via playbooks or even automated action via our automated response capabilities. What this means is essentially we're automating security operations with ingestion, parsing, correlated threat intelligence, defined detection rules, alerting prioritization, and we also have honeypots for lateral movement detection for our customers. And then we're helping to automate detection and response in the area of security operations automation with automated workflows and providing IT with response playbooks to make it simple and easy to understand what to do. On the Cloud SIM side, we do meet their requirement as far as like Cloud SIM for reporting, audit, all those fun things. And we have 100+ pre-built integrations, which is great. And then we backstop that with our product and security expertise. So there are security analysts that can interact with you directly in product, as well as help consult on identified threats if there's a question of what to do. And we're pretty hands-on in our interaction with customers, which helps us to continue to reiterate and develop the product in that process as well. So kind of full life cycle. What this looks like from a how it works perspective is essentially we integrate with your existing product stack. Once we're integrated, right, we are doing ingestion, parsing, threat intelligence, detection, alerting, prioritization, reporting. We're surfacing threats or suspected threats detected. And then the question more or less is, can it be automated? If it can take action, if it can't, then provide a workflow or playbook on what to actually do. And doing it in a fashion that doesn't require you to have deep, sophisticated skills. Now, on the integration side, right, here's a key, is that we built integrations for the customer's technology stack and address just about every technology out there. And if we don't, we pretty quickly get to coverage. And this includes both on-premise as well as cloud applications. But some of the key integration points are going to be things like your egress points with firewalls, your endpoint or EDR antivirus technologies. Your identity technology, right? As we're looking at users and their behavior, things like Active Directory, Microsoft Azure, and the full cloud infrastructure stack of Azure as well, coverage, and we'll be adding AWS and GCP soon. And then on the productivity side, making sure that we have coverage of Office 365, G Suite, and I'll show some examples there. And then lastly, host-based detection, so Windows servers, Linux. And we do have a broader stack than this, is just high level from a customer standpoint of things that we're covering. We also do help meet compliance requirements. We are a PCI compliant service ourselves and help customers addressing a range of different compliance requirements from PCI to CMMC, NIST, HIPAA, and so on. And how our product actually works is we are a cloud hosted service. We're in GCP. And essentially, we integrate with your existing tool stack via syslog, API, access as well. And we do that via a sensor, and that sensor then sends the logs to the Blumira service or alerts, in which we then correlate threat intelligence, apply detection rules, and provide threat hunting and response capabilities to you. So we alert you and notify you and recommend what actions to take, or in some cases actually automate and take the actions in the instance of things like next gen firewalls. So I'll show what that looks like in a moment. One of the biggest things I always encourage people is just to try the product. And my wife just made brownies for me, so don't mind if I grab a little bite while they're still warm. But on the, I should never do this during a webinar, but on the deployment timeline, what this looks like is essentially being able to get an account activated and logs ingested in a matter of hours. Typically in an hour, we have 80 to 90% coverage for a customer. And then we implement and deploy detections. At that stage, you're operational. We usually do a review to make sure that we've covered the adequate applications or the applicable applications within customer's environment. And then we continue to optimize that ongoing for the customer. So really getting time to value quick and being able to surface real risk within a customer's environment is what's key and important here. A brownie was a big mistake. So I'm gonna hop in product you can see here, this is our newer dashboard UI. And I'm gonna hop to a sensor to start out from a deployment perspective. So the Ubuntu sensor I mentioned, you can see here it's collecting different logs, lots of different events, and you can sort it and slice and dice multiple ways. And I can add modules. So for instance, if I want to integrate with my Carbon Black or Umbrella or CrowdStrike, I just click on the module and I type in the API keys. And from there, excuse me, from there, you're pretty much good to go. Apologies, don't mean to sneeze on a webinar today. Once you put the API keys in, you hit install and you're good to go. And then in addition to that, things like Office 365, Azure, everything is in here. I can also install a sensor honeypot module. When I click install, it then installs it on the sensor, and that becomes a honeypot as well. Now, we also can send syslog to the sensor as well to collect, so things like Palo Alto traffic or Fortinet traffic or Cisco traffic from your firewalls. Support other firewalls as well. Once we have that ingestion going on, right, we essentially then apply the detection rules for customers, and we start identifying threats within the customer's environment. Notably there, I think it's like immediately there isn't always threat or risk active, right? So depends on what the customer's environment looks like and what active attacks might be happening. We're surfacing real things that you need to take action on in this dashboard, and these are going to be some demo examples that I'll walk through. The first one is usually typically in a later stage of an attack, domain administrator account created. That's a good sign that someone's providing got access. You want to audit that. So first off, there's value in this suspected threat in an audit perspective, where you should be auditing your account administrators being created or any accounts created. So there's going to be audit value in that alone, but in this instance, I'm identifying, I'm not sure why this was created. So that's a risk, right? And a lot of times we see this in a ransomware attack, for instance. I'm going to close that suspected finding. And what that's going to do is essentially trigger a new threat ticket and alert via voice, text, or email based on how you configure. And if I go back to the responder view, what you're going to see here now is I have a rogue domain account administrator. And so what it's doing is providing the workflow as far as how to disable this account and what action to take. And then you can see here as well, we can interact directly in product with the security analyst team if we need additional information or steps. I can mark that as completed. So that action would be taken. And now essentially I've resolved that account creation. I can hop in here and we can look at a few other good examples. So many different things that we could hop in and show. I'm gonna hop in a few different examples. So one example here is G Suite authentication attempt from geographically unlikely location. So someone's logging in from 2 different places. We can see the locations provided from a logging perspective, right? So that's identifying this should not be happening to two different people or 2 different times in a matter of a certain span time. And then the recommended action as far as resetting the user's primary credentials is the right step to resolve the issue here. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of the automated actions as it relates to the workflows. So what the automated actions do is essentially allow you to take action in product or automate action. And in this instance, I'm going to show an example with Cisco AnyConnect where we're seeing anomalous access attempts. In this case, it's password spraying. So we see the password spraying, the users that they're attempting, and the IP addresses. We've also determined that these IP addresses a lot of times might be on a bad threat feed. And I'm going to block the source IP address of this attack. So it's going to resolve the finding. And we can see here that now on my block list, I have these IP addresses, or the IP address that was identified that's blocked on the next gen firewall. And you can configure this and see that it could be Cisco, it could be Palo Alto, FortiGate, Checkpoint, or anything else that supports a dynamic block list. We can automate this action by checking this box. And essentially I could then save it at this point. And we can also apply our the Blumira threat feeds that we correlate to do blocking automatically as well. So pretty nice to be able to knock out that low hanging fruit from an automation perspective. Now, showing some other examples. So I showed an example of like early stage attack, password spraying, later stage in the attack, new domain account administrators being spun up. So there's some other in between. So like a good example would be like duo access denied is a likely credential compromise. So what I would want to do there is reset the password to reestablish the primary authentication trust. So you can kind of see in the kill chain on the user side, the different areas that I'm hopping through. And then on the compliance side, I mentioned a little bit above, but there's operational new user account creation audits that we can enable for customers that allow them to have a full track record of auditing account creation which is required by compliance requirements like PCI or CMMC. Now, beyond that, some other common risks surfaced that we commonly find when we deploy a trial with a customer would be a good example would be risks that are associated with misconfiguration. So a public IP address, for instance, connecting to an internal network via RDP is a real risk to an organization that's pretty low hanging fruit to resolve. More or less, I can put that RDP behind a VPN from a connectivity perspective and put two-factor on, which are the steps we're recommending. And then some of the other examples of risk, G Suite customer, for example, would want to see documents that are being shared externally. So that's a good example when we talk about productivity suites, where you'd want to investigate to see if that should actually be happening. Now, a few other ones, like I equate this to like data loss prevention, right? DLP, the joke is always that it never gets deployed. In this instance, we're just giving indicators that, hey, likely data exfiltration is happening in large volumes that you'd want to take a look at or investigate. And here's an example of what a threat surfaced that we can provide via a firewall integration, for example. So a lot of different capabilities here from a visibility perspective and servicing real risk. And then from a dashboard perspective, finding or providing visibility into more or less, and I'll hop into monitor mode, threats detected, what's open, what are the current active findings in the location of where attacks are coming from. And then we can get into more granular detail if I hop down to security, for example, and take a look at things like top threats, top failed logins, which is very common, right? So seeing administrative logins failed all the time could be a misconfiguration, or it could be some actually type of attack someone's running. So things that you can easily kind of hop in and investigate from a visibility perspective. And then the last aspect here, which I'll show in just a second, is going to be search, and more or less being able to pinpoint different aspects from an account creation perspective, Active Directory perspective, or looking into other types of logs, so you can dive a little bit deeper into information. And a good example here is, and I can log out and log into account with the actual data in it, which will be good. But the a good example here. Got to find my phone to log in. Sorry. But a good example on the data side a lot of times is Windows event logs, right? More or less being able to quickly take a look at and identify information via event logs is a very, very common way to quickly dig in to maybe an issue or be proactive with an issue that maybe an end user has, or maybe it is a real attack that you're investigating itself. So I'm going to log in. Thanks for your patience here as I transition accounts and show some of the reporting capabilities. So if I go to search and I click on data, I can look at these different reports, and I'm going to do account creation, right? And I'm going to edit this search criteria because the data is a little bit older. We have some in there, but if I go back further, we're going to see from a search perspective more results come up. And this is a good example where now I have all this data and I can essentially pull out information. So I could search for things like the administrator, for example, account name. And I could even turn on distinct counts here. And now I'm going to get a summary of how many accounts were created in this example. Account creation probably isn't the best example, but where this becomes particularly interesting are things like number of failed logins. So I can essentially search and extrapolate from a data perspective where there's anomalies from a volume perspective. So the whole idea here in general is just to make it very easy, intuitive for anybody to be able to hop in, identify surface risks, be able to help resolve and remediate them, and then from a reporting perspective, be able to dive into detail as needed, more as a secondary function. A lot of times that that's as a result or a need of compliance requirements. So curious if, there's other things I can show, but if anybody has any requests or things they'd like to see from a product perspective, happy to answer any questions people have on the call as we have a little bit more time today. And I can poke around a little bit more, but certainly the reporting side, right? You can see we have a bunch of different global searches, and another good example would be if I type in firewall here, FTP from the internet, right? And a lot of times, right, there's FTP servers from many different places seeing connectivity, and maybe there's a valid reason for FTP from a business perspective, but people don't realize that there's a lot more that might be connecting to many different hosts. And so this is a good example where I can quickly identify where traffic is originating from and then going to, and in this instance, we can see a large amount of distinct counts, so lots of connectivity. And identifying, evaluating, and seeing, hey, is that purposeful from a business perspective or not, is a wonderful way to be able to hop around and identify risk real fast and real quick. So I think the another question someone asked was more or less about G Suite and other types of detections. And what I would say there is we do have blog post recently. We did a webinar last week with Google. So if you go to resources and blog, if we scroll down a little bit, I think with this announcement of Google Cloud Partner Advantage, I know Blumira easily integrates with G Suite, and we had a blog post. That's the webinar. Sorry, being a little bit jumping the gun, I think, but yeah, we had documented maybe it's here, man, all sorts of stuff. Maybe it's a little bit securing a remote work detection and response with G Suite, right? I think this breaks out some different examples of I talked about external detection, and I thought we listed some of the other playbooks as far as provided, but identifying different types of risk, and also with Office 365. So I think some common different things are like mail forwarding, in addition to sharing, is a big deal. And then there's a lot to do with credential login, because essentially G Suite is acting as the IDP. And that would be very similar to also Azure, as we're talking about the Microsoft stack of products, of the types of detections we typically would do in those instances. So try and publish that and provide as much information as possible. But just hopping back from a product perspective, what I hopped in and showed real quick is usually in about half hour to an hour, once we have a sensor up and running, we get on a call with customers, we deploy from a POC or trial perspective, and people get to see near immediate value, right? Whether it's just looking at the reports themselves or whether alerts kick up. And then a lot of times we do testing as well. So we have in some of our blog posts recommendations on how to test your existing SIM, whether it's testing a honeypot, whether it's testing password spraying, whether it's testing PowerShell bypass execution attempts, like those sorts of things, or as simple as just a domain account administrator are great examples of ways to test and validate a SIM is purposefully doing the function that it should be. So cool. That's all I have today as far as demo overview, hopping in the product. If there's any questions, don't hesitate, email sales@blumira.com. Our website, there's contact information as well there. And thanks everybody for attending today.